Cuba, without a doubt, is a quite peculiar country, an island in the middle of the Caribbean, trapped in the 50s, and with undeniable beauty. It is a country with many difficulties, but also with an ideology that we can undoubtedly learn from. Today we will be looking at 50 curious, fun and interesting facts about Cuba. There are two currencies in Cuba. It has a dual economy with two different currencies, one for Cubans and one for tourists. Cuba is known for having some of the best medical care in the world, and it is free for citizens. Education is also free, and it is mandatory for everyone between the ages of 6 and 15 to attend school. Cuba has 70,000 qualified doctors. In all of Africa, there are only 50,000, how crazy. Cuba is home to 9 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Old Havana is probably the most famous, but also Trinidad, Vinales and Cienfuegos are other popular UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Public transportation is very cheap compared to tourist buses and taxis. However, local buses do not serve tourists. If I ask you what Cuba is known for, surely it didn't occur to you to think about ballet. However, Cuba has the largest ballet school in the world. Although it is difficult to believe that it has already snowed in Cuba, although it has only snowed once, it was in March 1857, they say that February was crazy, March was a little bit different. Cuba stands out for having the first world chess champion, born in a developing country. José Raúl Capablanca, at only 4 years old, already knew how to play chess. At 12 he was champion of Cuba, and at 18 he defeated the world champion Lasker. Arnaldo Tamayo Mendez was a shoeshine boy who managed to reach space. With the triumph of the Cuban Revolution in 1959, he had the opportunity to enter a military school and ended up becoming a warplane pilot. On September 18, 1980 he would become the first non-American American astronaut to fly into space. Many think that going to Cuba is like traveling to the 50s. Older models from Buick, Packard, Hudson, Edsel and Ford are the most popular brands. The mere fact of being able to see these types of relics is reason enough for many to visit the country. Cuba occupies 18th place in the historical medal table of the Olympic Games and second among the countries of America, only surpassed by the United States. Cuba stands out for being the birthplace and school of great boxers. The island has 32 Olympic titles, 71 world champions. Cuba is often called El Cayman or El Crocodile, which is how the island looks from an aerial view. Fidel Castro erected a statue of John Lennon of the Beatles in 2000. Castro admired Lennon and believed he was a true music revolutionary. Cuba is the most populated country in the Caribbean, with more than 11 million inhabitants. Dance is very important in Cuba. It is the cradle of classic dance styles such as bolero, mambo, son, and cha-cha. Cuba has a literacy rate of 99.8%, which is one of the highest in the world. The only cars that Cuban citizens can legally own are cars created and purchased before 1959. After this year, the Cuban government seized all the cars and owns them today. One of Cuba's best-known products is the cigar. In fact, all smoking experts agree that the best tobacco in the world is produced here. Another excellent product is the famous Cuban rum, which is used to make one of the most famous Cuban drinks, the mojito. In 2021, the minimum wage goes from 400 to 2,100 Cuban pesos. It is a good increase, yes, but it is still a ridiculous figure, barely $90 a month, while the cost of living has increased at a greater rate. To this day in Cuba, they still have a monthly ration card. Thanks to this, they have the right to basic foods such as rice, flour, beans, eggs, etc. at an affordable price. Does the smallest bird in the world live in Cuba? It is the zunzuncito hummingbird, which only measures about 5 centimeters. It is also known as a fly bird. There is only one McDonald's in Cuba, and it is located in Guantanamo, in the North American military base that belongs to all intents and purposes to the United States. Do you know how the United States pays for the rent of that territory? With a check that barely exceeds $4,000 a year, although they say that the Cuban government has never cashed the checks. One of the most popular social activities in Cuba is meeting up to play dominoes. Even in parks, there are usually little tables where you can improvise a few games of that game. Cuba may be a paradise for many, but not for Santa Claus. On this Caribbean island, Christmas was eliminated between 1969 and 1998. Apparently, Fidel Castro decided to cancel the holidays and declare those days as work days for a purely economic issue. They were re-established in 1998 on the occasion of the visit of John Paul II to Cuba. Cuba is the largest island in the entire Caribbean and number 17 in the world. The vast majority of Cubans profess the Catholic faith, but the second most practiced religion is Santeria. In the main hall of the capital is the Statue of the Republic. This is the third largest indoor statue in the world, with a total height of 17.54 meters. For 28 years, Javier Sotomayor from Matanzas still holds the high jump record, with 2.45 meters. Based on UNICEF data, Cuba is currently the only country in Latin America without severe child malnutrition. Did you know that another of the curiosities of Cuba is the internet? The connection has improved a lot for tourists and locals, mainly the latter. Keep in mind that the connection will be somewhat limited. Many websites and services do not open from Cuba due to the United States blockade. Havana was the first city in Latin America to have the first cemetery built outside of a church, before Madrid in 1806. In Cuba, there were bullfights for almost 400 years. They were abolished in 1899. Havana was French for 24 hours in 1537. Cuba had public lighting since 1889, being one of the first places in the world. The first automobile that circulated in Latin America was in Cuba in 1900. Another of the curiosities of Cubans is that the first Latin American aviation flight was made from Cuba to Key West in 1913. The Grand Duchess of Luxembourg Maria Theresa, wife of Grand Duke Enrique, is Cuban and was the first sovereign of a European monarchy of Latin American origin. The Prince of Asturias Alfonso de Borbón, son of Alfonso XIII, renounced his rights to be King of Spain by marrying the Cuban Edelmira San Pedro Rabato in 1933. The Cuban Missile Crisis was the diplomatic conflict between the United States, the Soviet Union and Cuba in October 1962, generated by the United States becoming aware of the existence of medium-range nuclear missile bases of the Soviet Army in Cuba. This has been the closest the world has come to starting a Third World War. It has the smallest amphibian in the world, the frog. It is the size of a common fly that measures about 7.7 millimeters long. The United States imposed an economic and trade embargo on Cuba in the 1960s, which has had a significant impact on the Cuban economy and bilateral relations. In Cuba, the health system is free, so you will not even pay for consultations, dentists, complex operations, even aesthetic surgeries are free. Cuba has beautiful beaches, such as Varadero, as well as impressive natural landscapes, due to its privileged location. Cuba experienced a revolution led by Fidel Castro in 1959, which overthrew the government of Fulgencio Batista and established a socialist regime in the country. Cuba has produced a number of famous writers, such as José Martí, Alejo Carpentier, José Lezama Lima and Guillermo Cabrera Infante, whose works have influenced Latin American literature. Cuban food is varied and tasty, with traditional dishes such as rice with black beans, congri, tostón, ropa villa and roast suckling pig. Mojito and daiquiri are famous Cuban cocktails. Ernesto Che Guevara, an Argentine-Cuban revolutionary leader, played an important role in the Cuban Revolution and is an iconic figure in Cuban history and global pop culture. And with that, we finish our tour of this wonderful island full of beauty, history, and culture. Tell us what caught your attention the most, and if we have missed any information that you know, let us know in the comments. Thanks for supporting the video. That helps us a lot to continue creating content for you. Thanks for watching and, without further ado, see you in the next video.